What's up, YouTube? So I recently posted a video recreating a sound that I had done in a previous video using some really cool free software called Voltage Modular Nucleus. So I figured it's probably a good idea to follow that video up with a couple of kind of basics about the software and some more, how can I say, musical sounds that you could use in your Psytrance tracks. And so yeah, let's dive in and have a look. So for those who aren't familiar with kind of how a modular system works, this is probably going to be quite an informative video. I'm going to try to go through like the basics, how modular systems generally deal with pitch and triggering information and that kind of thing. For those who are familiar with how modular works, this might be a little bit of a simple video, but that being said, there might be some ideas here. I'm going to move on to some more advanced stuff a little bit later on in the video. So I explained in my previous video, Voltage Modular Nucleus is basically the free watered down version of Voltage Modular. I think it's only free for a couple of months while everyone's kind of in quarantine and stuff like that. So the Nucleus package is pretty basic. There are some things that I'd wish they could expand on a little bit. However, that being said, for free software that works so fluidly with a DAW, it's actually really cool considering that it's free. You can do a lot with it, and a lot of the stuff that I kind of wish they added can always be done with effects on the channel later on down the line. So the cool thing about Voltage Modular is that it's got this system built in where it handles your inputs, outputs, MIDI, and all sorts of stuff like that. So you don't necessarily have to worry about setting those kinds of things up. You can just dive in and start dropping the kind of modules that you want to use into the cabinet. So to start things off, I want to do something a little bit simple. Let's just do a sort of regular saw lead. So what we'll need with this is an oscillator. Let's go with 2 envelopes, one for the filter and one for the VCA or the amplifier. And then let's drop in the filter over here. And to make things a little bit easier, we're probably just going to want to put a mixer over here. And then we can route our outputs to these outputs over here. So there's left and right, and there's only a mono mixer at the moment, but I'll show you guys a little bit later how to do panning and stereo stuff once we get a little bit more advanced with it. So here what we're going to want to do is patch the pitch output of this red CV module, top left, into the keyboard CV input of the oscillator. So what's going to happen is, in our DAW now, when we're sending it note information, it's going to change the note that this oscillator is tuned to. So without getting into the gate, let's just patch the saw into the input of the mixer. We want to make sure that the volume is down. We can start turning it up. So if we play the track, I'm just going to solo it, and then we jump back to our Voltage Modular. Okay, so let's just mute that for now. So you'll notice that it's receiving the note information from that MIDI channel in our DAW, but it's not receiving the gate information, i.e. when the note is triggered. So it's a kind of endless loop of audio, and it's not triggering the notes on and off in the rhythm that I've kind of written in this MIDI pattern. So actually what I want to do is, you guys can copy this MIDI pattern if you want. It is for a track that I'm working on, but you guys can always get inspiration from that. I don't mind. Anyway, you can pause it and copy that if you want. So let's look at how to get the actual note trigger information into our system here. But first, let's have a look at a filter. So what we want to do is let's just patch, instead of patching it straight into the mixer, let's patch it into the filter's audio input. And then let's use this low pass, which is this one on the left here. You can see it's got that kind of curve downwards. Let's patch that into the input of the mixer. So what we can do, just to create some movement while we're playing around with the sound, let's just pop an LFO in here, and let's send this rate into the freak mod over here. So let's drop in an amplifier module over here, and let's run the output of this filter into the input here, and then the output of the amp into the mixer. And then this CV input we want to route to, or we want to route from the envelope output of our second envelope generator, and then we can route this gate over here to the gate input. So now what's going to happen is the MIDI on the channel, every time that MIDI note hits, it's going to trigger this envelope, and that's going to control the output volume. So this is the result. Cool, so I'm just going to put a delay on the channel just to liven things up a little bit there. I actually just want to turn the mix down a little bit because it's a little bit too brutal still. So here what we can do is we can route this gate to the other envelope generator, and then let's send this to freak mod input 2 of the filter, and we can use this to create like a plucky vibe. Cool, that's sounding awesome. So what I want to show you guys actually is that in the modular environment, oscillators and LFOs are essentially the same thing. So what I want to do is let's actually just remove this LFO and let's send this sine to this freak mod input. Let's solo it again. But the plus side is you've got the ability to tune them, for example, to the pitch of the CV. So you could do sort of audio rate modulation stuff with a filter like that, or you could do, you know, regular LFO type of stuff where the speed of the LFO is kind of tuned to the key of the note that it's playing, which is some pretty interesting kind of stuff that you can do there. And on a side note, you can actually do FM with this kind of thing as well. If you just send one of the oscillators, one of the outputs here into the frequency modulation input, obviously, of the other oscillator, then you've got this mod amount over here. So it's not as accurate as a lot of the other soft synths out there. It's kind of more similar to like an analog FM as opposed to phase modulation. But you can get some pretty interesting results here. And then if you send the square output into the hard sync input of the other one, what happens is every time this one's sort of cycle starts, it resets this one's cycle. So you get a little bit more of a phase accurate frequency modulation thing going on, as you can hear. Cool, I want to save that preset, but for those who are going to load it, just remember that you can reduce the FM and also FM on this side to get a more kind of leady sound as opposed to FM sound. So what I want to do here is let's go for less of a lead type of thing. Let's focus more on a FM with a kind of random filter type thing going on. But what I want to do is I still want to have a kind of root note being fed to the synth, which we can use as a kind of to tune the oscillators to each other. So let's just leave this long C playing over here. Maybe pitch it down. Cool. So here, let's switch this to a band pass filter. Let's take the envelope and FM control out. Turn the resonance up. And then what we can do is, so I discussed this in the previous tutorial, so I'm not actually going to go too in depth with this, but let's create a random generator with these two modules. Let's send the white noise into the input, send the output into the frequency modulation of the filter. So here, what we want to do is we actually want to get a clocked trigger. So we can use the synced clock from our DAW, which is this blue one over here, sync out into the sync divider module, and then clock out into the external trigger. And then you've got the ability to choose 1/8, 1/16, 1/32, etc. This is cool because you can do it on the fly. But also what we're going to use this for is to create a sequencer. Let's put in this 8-step sequencer over here. So I'm not going to get into this right now. Let's just listen to what it sounds like with a random generation on the filter. Let's remove this CV that's being generated by the envelope, just so that the amp is playing directly through. Let's send this clock into the clock input of our sequencer and then set this external on. And then what we want to do is send this play into the start and the stop into the stop. And let's put play like that into reset. There we go. So we could potentially use these CV values to send to the filter over here to create less of a random and more of a kind of sequenced movement if we wanted to. And this is cool because we've got like control over the amount of steps. So we could do like 6 steps to create something more rhythmical and sort of more off the 4/4 kind of thing. And then we could slowly like bring in some random as well if we wanted. But what I wanted to do here with the sequencer is let's send this gate output into the gate input of our envelope here. Turn this attack down a little bit. And then set this to control the amplifier. So here, like I said earlier, what I want to show you guys is how we can do panning. Let's duplicate this mixer over here, and then let's click here, and you'll see it opens up our kind of polyphonic routing, and pop one of these outputs into this side over here. So now we've created two separate mixers, and we're going to want to run the identical output of each like this. So now what we want to do is let's create two amplifiers here. These are going to be our sort of panning controllers, and we're going to want an attenuverter over here. So what the attenuverter is going to do is it's going to basically take in a modulation input and send it to both of our panning generators, or our panning sort of managers, whatever you want to call them. And we're going to invert the one so that it basically sends one the one way while it sends the other way, if that makes sense. Let's send output to CV in, output to CV in of the second one. And what we're going to want to do is send each of them one of these outputs, and then each of the outputs to the subsequent mixer. And then we're going to click invert on the second one. What we could do is we could set an LFO, for example, or an oscillator, however you want, to send to both of these inputs. And then one last thing I want to wrap up with. Unfortunately, this envelope generator doesn't have a CV input for the decay controller. You could potentially, link it to one of these perform signs over here. So you could do that and kind of perform it as a macro, so to speak. But I'd prefer to do this kind of thing with a sequencer. Maybe we could even link it to the same CV control here. Just move this down to the second layer here to make things easier to see what's going on. And let's duplicate it. Hold Alt and drop it like this. So let's send the gate from the same gate output over here. And the one we're going to have short decay, the other one we're going to have long decay. So here, what we're going to do is we're actually going to do a similar thing to what we did here with the attenuverter. So let's duplicate this. Hold Alt and drag. And let's send the CV output here into both inputs, and let's create another amplifier module, two amplifier modules in fact, and we'll route output and output like this, like we did in the previous example. Let's actually turn both these gains down, CV amounts up. Both of these envelope outputs are going to run to with these attenuverters, we're sending to the CV inputs. These envelopes are going to send to the amplifier inputs like this, and then the outputs are going to both send to the CV input. So here's a really powerful thing about this is you don't need a mult or a mix to send both of these inputs in like that. So that makes things a little bit handier for these kind of smaller patches. So here, what's happening is this CV control is going to change, hopefully, our decays. Okay, so I was wrong. You don't actually need this invert to be on the second chain. So let's just clean things up a little bit here before I save the patch for you guys. Awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what you think in the comments. A big thanks to IDM Mag, proud supporters of the dance music scene and my channel. I'm going to be posting these presets to my Patreon for all my $5 supporters. So if you want to know what that's all about, check out the link that's going to be in the description. Yeah, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. See you guys next time.